Hello, psych goers. Welcome back to another video. On the cold, fog-covered nights of London in 1888, whispers spread through the narrow cobbled alleys of Whitechapel. Gas lamps flickered weakly, casting long shadows across damp brick walls, while the sound of footsteps echoed through the dark. It was here, in the heart of London's East End, that one of history's most terrifying and enduring mysteries was born. The story of Jack the Ripper. A name that would forever haunt the world of crime, striking fear into the hearts of Victorian Londoners and captivating investigators for more than a century. The year was 1888, and the East End of London was no stranger to poverty and misery. Whitechapel was a neighborhood overflowing with overcrowded lodging houses, crime, alcoholism, and desperation. It was a place where hundreds of destitute men and women fought daily for survival. Prostitution was common, with many women forced into the trade simply to afford a night's shelter. Life was cheap, and dignity was often stripped away by hunger and addiction. And in this bleak backdrop, a murderer emerged, one who not only killed but mutilated, leaving behind a trail of blood and mystery that would puzzle the world for generations. The first official victim of Jack the Ripper is often considered to be Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly. On the morning of August 31st, 1888, her body was discovered lying on Buck's Row. Her throat had been slashed twice and her abdomen viciously mutilated. Police officers who arrived at the scene were horrified. This was not the work of an ordinary killer. The precision and cruelty of the wounds suggested something far darker. Just a week later, the killer struck again. Annie Chapman was found murdered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Her throat had been cut, her abdomen ripped open, and parts of her internal organs removed. The brutality shocked investigators, and whispers of a monster roaming the streets began to take hold. The press quickly latched onto the story, sensationalizing it and giving the unknown murderer a name: Jack the Ripper. By September 1888, fear had taken hold of London. Women were afraid to walk the streets at night, and the poor lodging houses of Whitechapel became even more dangerous. On the early morning of September 30th, the killer performed what is now known as the double event. Two women, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, were murdered within the span of an hour. Stride's murder was somewhat different. She was found with her throat cut but not mutilated like the others. Some investigators believed the Ripper may have been interrupted, forcing him to flee before completing his gruesome ritual. But less than an hour later, Catherine Eddowes' body was found in Mitre Square, and her mutilations were the worst yet. Her face was slashed beyond recognition, and internal organs had been removed with chilling precision. The sheer savagery of the attack made it clear: Jack the Ripper was escalating. Then came the most infamous murder of all, the killing of Mary Jane Kelly on November 9th, 1888. Unlike the other victims, she was murdered indoors, inside her small room at Miller's Court. The scene was so horrifying that even seasoned detectives were shaken to their core. Mary Jane Kelly's body was mutilated beyond recognition, with her organs removed and spread across the room. Her face was butchered, leaving only a haunting shell of the woman she once was. It was as if the killer, finally away from the risk of being caught outside, unleashed his full rage and darkness. The Ripper's crimes were not just murders. They were a spectacle of terror. Newspapers sold thousands of copies by printing every gruesome detail, and the East End of London became a stage where fear performed nightly. Letters claiming to be from the Ripper began arriving at police stations and newspapers. The most infamous of these was the Dear Boss letter, signed with the chilling name Jack the Ripper. Another letter, known as the From Hell letter, arrived with half of a preserved human kidney, allegedly from one of the victims. Whether these letters were truly written by the killer remains a mystery, but they added fuel to the fire of public panic. The police struggled desperately to solve the case. Detectives interviewed hundreds of suspects, patrolled the streets at night, and tried to calm the terrified public. But the Ripper always seemed to vanish into the fog, leaving behind no witnesses, no clear evidence, and no trace of his identity. Over the years, countless suspects have been named. Some believed Jack the Ripper was a local butcher or surgeon, given the precision of the mutilations. Others suspected foreigners, blaming immigrants in Whitechapel during a time of racial and social tensions. One theory even suggested he was a member of the royal family or a wealthy gentleman with dark secrets. Names like Montague John Druitt, Aaron Kosminski, and even Prince Albert Victor have been floated as possible identities, but none were ever proven. Let's look at the reasons why Jack the Ripper remains one of the most famous serial killers in history. First, the brutality of the crimes. The way Jack the Ripper mutilated his victims was shocking and disturbing, even by today's standards. He didn't just kill these women, he viciously disemboweled them, removed their organs, and partially cannibalized some of them. This level of violence and depravity made him one of the earliest known serial killers in modern history. Second, the mystery surrounding his identity. Despite extensive investigations, the police were never able to catch Jack the Ripper or even figure out who he was. There are now theories that link everyone from an aristocrat to a doctor to a member of the royal family. And this mystery has only added to the intrigue of the case over the decades. Third, the Ripper's obsession with the press. Jack the Ripper was one of the first serial killers to use the media to communicate with the public and the police. He sent letters to newspapers and police stations taunting them, and sometimes even sending body parts from his victims as souvenirs. This bizarre behavior showed that he enjoyed the notoriety and made him a household name throughout Great Britain and abroad. Fourth, the social context of the murders. Jack the Ripper operated in London's impoverished East End district called Whitechapel. These areas were notoriously dirty and crime-ridden, and they offered Jack the opportunity to operate with little interference. Additionally, his victims were mostly sex workers, which made them easy targets and meant that nobody really cared about their disappearance at first. Fifth, the lack of forensic technology. When Jack the Ripper was operating, forensic science was still in its infancy, meaning that much of the evidence he left behind was overlooked or not properly analyzed. If he had committed his crimes today, it's likely that DNA evidence would have caught him. However, the time period in which he lived allowed him to slip through the cracks and evade capture. Sixth, the fact that the case is still officially unsolved. Even today, Jack the Ripper's identity and the full story behind his crimes are still unknown. The mystery surrounding the case has kept it in the public consciousness for over a century, spawning countless books, TV shows, and movies. Seventh, the lasting impact on London. Jack the Ripper-ass murders terrified the citizens of London and created a climate of fear that lasted for weeks and months afterwards. The city was already suffering from poverty and hardship, and the addition of these brutal murders made things even worse. The Ripper's legacy has continued to live on in the popular imagination, and many people still associate London with darkness and danger because of his crimes. Finally, the character of Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper was not only a brutal murderer, but also a clever and cunning individual who managed to evade the police for months. This has made him an iconic figure in criminal history and a symbol of pure evil. Many people have become fascinated with the idea of such a terrifying person existing, and this interest has only grown over time. The story of Jack the Ripper is not just about murder, it is about mystery. It is about a name that continues to echo through history, reminding us that sometimes evil hides in plain sight, and sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we never truly see. As the fog of London rolled over the cobblestones in 1888, one man slipped silently into the night, leaving behind victims, terror, and a legend. More than 130 years later, we are still asking the same question. Who was Jack the Ripper? Did you find this video interesting? Do you think you can solve the case of Jack the Ripper? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like, If you're new here, subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.